Welcome back to a new section of Cult to Community. We're looking today at section 2, forming community. And the first, actually, I found quite refreshing, a little dose of fiction from one of our favorite authors, George MacDonald, who has been an inspiration to so many other great authors, C.S. Lewis, Tolkien. And this chapter is actually an extract from his book, Thomas Wingfold, Curate, which I have not read. Have you read?
I think it's a collection that he wrote in the 1800s, so it would take some doing to get through the series.
Yeah.
But if you're interested, I just wanted to give a little shout out to Plough Publishing and their collection of George MacDonald's works. It's The Gospel in George MacDonald. Mm-hmm. That's really great if you want to read more from this amazing author.
Yeah, it's a beautiful anthology. Check it out. But this chapter, well, the heading is A Vision, and it's a vision that one of the characters in this novel has of the heavenly kingdom, where there is no buying and selling, and people are able to get what they need without paying for it, and are able to give and serve without any monetary exchange. And it's really a beautiful vision. But I think we should start at the end here, because at the end of this vision, this very beautiful vision of people living in bliss with without greed, without selfishness. At the end of this vision, one of the characters says, "I think that could be," and then another character says, "Not in this world." And I think that is what many people believe, this sort of utopian existence is not possible for human beings. We're incapable, because of our natures, of living unselfishly, of not wanting to accumulate more for ourselves. But then the other character, and this is the final sentence, says, "To doubt that it could be," said the gatekeeper, "would be to doubt whether the kingdom of heaven is a chimera, illusory, or a divine idea." And I think that really speaks to the heart of what our attempt to live in community, what I think many people desire is, do we really believe what we say as professing Christians?
Because it's so easy to give up otherwise and not bother to try. And I think that's the end of the excerpt. That's what that points out, is this is possible and attainable. And I also thought it interesting, Rich, in the excerpt from George MacDonald that we have here, the characters or the people in the vision that's being shown to this other character, they're kind of going through the actions or the motions of buying and selling, yet they're not using coins or earthly compensation or...
Yeah, right.
So
it says, "No man paid and no man had a book wherein to write which the other owed." The one character, the guide in the vision, when he's questioned about this vision, how is it possible? He responds, "Where neither greed nor ambition nor selfishness reigneth, there need and desire have free scope, for they work no evil." And then later in the vision, there's this anecdote about how a man experiences a moment of, a thought of accumulation for himself, of selfish desire, and right away drops to his knees, and everyone around him also kneels in prayer to pray for him. Yes. And this is the church, supporting someone who's going through a time of temptation. But you read this, "Where neither greed nor ambition nor selfishness reigneth." That almost seems impossible, right? We're very transactional people, generally. We want to get something for something.
Mm-hmm. We want recognition, at the very least, that we've done a good job. And he points out then earlier, very similarly, where greed and ambition and self-love rule, money must be. And then where there is neither greed nor ambition nor self-love, money is needless. So framed in a bit of a different way, but that's kind of why our world is driven in that sense, and why community is countercultural and so at odds with general society, I would say.
So how do we get to this state where neither greed nor ambition nor selfishness reigneth? I mean,
I think a lot of it has to do with humility, and that's also what he points out in this chapter. I mean, that the character, the gentleman that, so the person watching the vision unfold said, like, what happens if somebody does have some greed or ambition in their heart when they're going about this? And then he points out the need for repentance and how everyone came to pray for this person that recognized that. But to have the humility to ask for intervention and help, I think, is challenging, to say the least, because none of us want to admit when we're wrong, or it's often a struggle to do that. And then after the church came together to pray for this man, it talks about how he walked away with clear eyes and joy, and I thought that was a really, really neat imagery.
Well, I think that's probably the biggest insight. And actually, this chapter is prefaced by an excerpt from an address given by an article by Arnold, Why We Live in Community, which talks about, I mean, you spoke of repentance, which really is just emptying yourself of your own nature, of your sinful nature. And he speaks about how community can really only be formed on that basis. How any other attempt to form community, whether it's good intentions or even, utopian idealism, is doomed to failure if, the first step is not an emptiness, an emptying of oneself and an openness to the divine. And that's what's, I think, the hardest thing about community is continuing on the way in that emptiness. You need to find that over and over again, I think, is the point.
Yes, it's not a one and done deal. It's not like I've been saved, I'm good to go. Yeah, it's just a constant need for renewal and being willing to be open to that.
I think at the beginning of this book, in the foreword by Stanley Hauerwas, he says at the beginning, community is dangerous, and it's an extremely dangerous way to go on without this recognition, without this emptying of yourself, and that needs to happen, because without that, human nature is just bound to be destructive of community. And it can become coercive and something that is not, divinely inspired.
I also thought it was interesting in this chapter how George MacDonald points out in this vision that he is relaying how the people, once they had what they need, they were like looking out for everyone else in the crowd to see what they needed next. And so I think part of the vision that is also extremely important, that also speaks to the risk, is like you have to look out beyond yourself, and if you just turn inwards or just analyze your own actions constantly, it doesn't really do much for the community or for the other people that you have built a fellowship with. So I think that's part of it as well. That's also in this chapter, and it's a constant challenge, and it's a good one. You just have to recognize that it's a complete revolution of values. To your world, this world goeth by contraries. The man here that doeth most service, that aideth others the most to the obtaining of their honest desires, is the man who standeth highest with the Lord of the place. And his reward and honor is to be enabled to the spending of himself yet more for the good of his fellows. Wow.
That's aspirational.
Yes, it is.
Anyway, very interested in what you think about this chapter, whether you believe this vision could be. We obviously believe it could and can be. But with a fair amount of effort and work. So,
Yeah, that sums it up well.
well, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.